All right, let's talk about one of the most incredible, almost unbelievable true stories in all of American history. I'm talking about Robert Smalls, a man whose life sounds more like a blockbuster movie than reality.
So how in the world does something like this even happen? How does an enslaved man steal a Confederate warship of all things and then end up in the U.S. Congress? Let's get right into it, starting with the single jaw-dropping act that made everything else possible. Okay, picture this. It's the middle of the night, May 13th, 1862. We're in Charleston Harbor. And I mean, this is the absolute heart of the Confederacy, surrounded by forts, patrolled by sentries, and this is where Robert Smalls is about to risk it all.
You know, the plan Smalls came up with it was as brilliant as it was terrifying. It all kicks off around 3 a.m. He puts on the captain's signature straw hat and coat. Can you even imagine the guts that took? He eases the Confederate warship, the Planter, right off its dock. First, a quick, quiet stop to pick up his family and others, 16 people total, who were hiding on another boat. Then came the real test, running the gauntlet of Confederate forts. He'd memorized the secret whistle signals for the first 3. But the final challenge was Fort Sumter itself. At 4:15 in the morning, with everyone else hiding on deck, Smalls confidently gives the correct hand signal, and there's this heart-stopping moment of silence, and then the fort just waves them on. Once they're safely out of range, down comes the Confederate flag, and up goes a simple white bedsheet his wife had brought. He had just sailed them all to freedom.
But here's the thing, this wasn't just an escape. Not even close. I mean, look at what he brought with him. The Planter wasn't some empty boat, it was a floating arsenal. It had its own cannons, 4 extra heavy artillery guns, and, get this, the real prize, the captain's codebook. In one single move, Smalls handed the Union Navy the keys to Charleston's defenses, including the exact locations of underwater mines that he himself had helped lay.
And this quote, man, this tells you everything you need to know about his mindset. When he finally reached the Union blockade, these were his first words. He didn't see himself as some runaway just surrendering a ship. No, he saw himself as a soldier returning stolen federal property to its rightful owners. In his mind, he was already fighting for the Union.
So that's the big question, right? How does a man born into slavery get the skills, the knowledge, and just the sheer nerve to pull off something like this? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back, way back.
Smalls was born in a little cabin right behind his enslaver's house. And yeah, he was what they called a house slave, which came with, some minor privileges compared to the field. But his mother, Lydia, was terrified. She was scared that this tiny bit of comfort would make him complacent. So she did something that's just incredible. She made him watch the absolute horrors of the plantation, the whipping post, the slave auctions. She needed him to see the brutal truth of their situation, and it worked. It forged a defiant spirit in him that would define the rest of his life.
So when he gets sent to Charleston at just 12 years old, the city's harbor basically becomes his university. And this table, it's not just a resume, right? It's like the training montage from a movie, showing exactly how he put all the pieces together. As a lamplighter, he learned the city's security patterns. As a rigger and sailmaker, he learned every single inch of his ship. And finally, as a wheelman, that was the title they gave to black pilots who were legally barred from being called pilots, he memorized every current, every sandbar, and most importantly, every single Confederate signal in that harbor.
And then there's this number, $800. That was the price. The impossible price that the owner of his wife, Hannah, demanded for her freedom and their children's. Smalls knew. He knew he could never, ever save that much money. The whole system was designed to keep his family in chains forever. So, faced with that impossible price, what does he do? He forges a totally different path. Instead of trying to buy his family, he liberates them. Not just them, but 16 people, all in one night on that ship. This wasn't just some military operation for him. This was deeply, deeply personal. And just like that, the escape turned Smalls into an overnight sensation in the North. He wasn't contraband anymore, captured property. He was a national hero. And he immediately used that new platform to help change the entire course of the war. I mean, Smalls's courage and his obvious intelligence, it was just undeniable proof that African Americans could be and would be effective soldiers. So he goes to Washington, he meets with President Lincoln and Secretary of War Stanton, and he makes the case himself. And guess what? Shortly after, the order comes down to recruit black regiments, and Smalls himself,
He helps recruit 5,000 men for the cause.
And he didn't just recruit. Oh no, he fought. We're talking 17 battles. In April '63, he's piloting this ironclad that takes 90 direct hits during an attack on Fort Sumter. But his real defining moment comes that December. He's back on the Planter, but it's a Union ship now. It comes under this insane fire, and the white captain just panics. He tries to surrender. Smalls knows that for him and the black crew, capture means certain death, so he just takes over. He seizes the wheel, gets the ship out of the kill zone, and saves every single person on board. For that act of pure courage, he was promoted to captain, becoming the first black man to command a U.S. vessel.
So, after the war ends, you'd think Captain Smalls would take a break, right? Nope. He goes right back home to Beaufort, South Carolina, not just as a war hero, but with his brand new mission to build a truly multiracial democracy right there, from the ashes of the Old South.
And the first thing he does, it's just pure poetic justice. He takes the prize money he was awarded for capturing the Planter, goes back to the very house where he was born a slave, and he buys it. Can you even wrap your head around that? He went from living in a shack out back to owning the entire property. And in this incredible act of grace, he let the widow of his former enslaver live there until she died.
And right away, Smalls becomes this political powerhouse. He helps found the Republican Party of South Carolina, and his impact is, well, it's just massive. I mean, think about this. He helps write the law that creates the state's very first public school system for all kids. He helps 14,000 formerly enslaved families buy their own land. He even co-founds a black-owned railroad. He's literally building the foundation for a new, more equal society.
So all this work eventually leads him to the U.S. Congress, where he serves 5 terms. But as that initial hope of Reconstruction starts to fade, Smalls finds himself on the front lines of a brand new war, a desperate fight to protect the very rights he'd helped win in the first place.
And it all really comes to a head in 1895. The white supremacists, led by this guy named Pitchfork Ben Tillman, they call a constitutional convention. And their goal is explicit, to legally write black citizens out of the political process. Smalls is one of only 6 black delegates in that room, and he stands up to them. He argues not just for justice, but for the economic soul of the entire state.
And this right here, this was the heart of his argument. He warned them. He said, look, if you do this, if you enforce Jim Crow, black families are going to leave. He argued that the black worker was the bone and sinew of South Carolina's whole economy, and without them, everything would collapse. It was this powerful plea based on shared economic interest, not just on morality.
Well, Smalls and the other black delegates, they lost that fight. The new Constitution passed and the dark era of Jim Crow began. But they refused to sign the document. It was one last act of defiance. And even though the laws they fought against would stand for decades, Smalls' legacy, well, it proved to be completely unsinkable.
I mean, history remembers his name, right? The system tried to erase him, but his legacy just kept going. There's an Army ship that bears his name, a school that honors his fight for education. His home? It's a national historic landmark. And even Congress eventually recognized his service, granting him a pension equal to that of a Navy captain.
You know, Robert Smalls said that all he ever needed was an equal chance in the battle of life. And his entire life was a fight for exactly that. From stealing a warship to challenging a racist constitution, he proved that with that one chance, absolutely anything was possible. So it kind of leaves us with a question for our own time, doesn't it? What is this story of incredible talent and determination breaking through a totally unjust system? What does it tell us about that battle for an equal chance today?